What's going on, guys? Coach Hayden here, coming to you live from Steel, and today we're going to be talking about how often should I eat? It's a question that you might ask yourself often. If weight loss, weight management of any kind, even if you're trying to gain weight, any of these weight considerations might lead you to ask yourself how often you should be eating during the day. It should be noted that there are a lot of ways to answer this question. We're not going to cover all of those answers exhaustively in this video, but hopefully we'll give you some guidelines to think through and a kind of line of questioning that you can go down. First one, we're going to kind of give you the answer right away, and then we'll go back and explain the reasoning behind the answer. Usually 3 to 5 meals per day tends to fit most people's preferences for the most part. It's most popular for most people's eating patterns, to where 3 meals a day is kind of the general rule of thumb. And then there's opportunities during the day to have small snacks, maybe even small meals in between those breakfast, lunch, and dinner slots. So that's generally why 3 to 5 meals a day works best for most people. It can also target not just calorie needs, but protein needs as well. There's actually a lot of recent scientific literature that's been coming out recently demonstrating that having more frequent feedings throughout the week is better from a muscle protein synthesis standpoint. So the more feedings you have of protein, the better response that we get in muscle growth. So instead of, let's say you are trying to eat 100 grams of protein per day, let's say you only eat 2 meals, instead of only getting 50 grams of protein per day and your meals are spaced out really far, if you have 4 or 5 different feedings, you have more opportunities to stimulate muscle growth, and that actually might be better for performance in the gym, improvements in your physique, and other characteristics of your goals in that way. Also, just from a fullness and satiety standpoint, having more meals in this range rather than like a 1 meal a day or having lots of meals in a day, is that 3 to 5 meals per day tends to strike a good balance of meal sizes to where you feel like you're getting enough food per meal, and that we're hitting all those calorie and protein benchmarks, and you are reasonably full by the end of the meal and in between that point and when you're going to eat next. So you're not super hungry by the time you're done with that meal, and you're not itching to wait for the next one. So 3 to 5 tends to be a good range. As far as how calories play into this, there are a lot of moving parts with this, but daily calories does have an effect on where in this range you're going to land. If you are trying to lose weight in that way, eating less calories than if you're trying to maintain or gain weight, then you're probably going to be eating fewer meals than usual. On the flip side, if you're trying to gain weight and thus eat more calories, more meals is probably going to be best for you. Now, it should be noted with both of these cases is that there of course are exceptions, and one of which can be an issue with eating fewer meals if you're trying to lose weight is the risk of overeating. So let's say you are trying intermittent fasting, and that's just when you wake up, you get out of bed, and you have nothing to eat until somewhere around the midday, like just after the clock strikes noon. You might wait until later in the day to have your one meal. This can be good for certain people if that's a sustainable habit for you, but what can often happen is that when that meal rolls around, it's easy to overdo it because you have lots of hunger signals that have built up during the day, and then once it's time to eat, you find that it's really easy to eat lots of food, which can be a good thing for certain people, but not that great if you're trying to lose weight, but then the time comes around to eat and you find yourself eating all these high calorie foods that are easy to eat a lot of, but then you find out by the end of the meal, you're pushing 3,000 calories. And if you're at 2,200 calories for maintenance, that's just way overboard and may not be for you. On the flip side, so if we have more meals during the day, it can be better for gaining weight because you have more chances to spread out your calories, your protein, your carbohydrates, and your fats. But if you are a lighter eater, generally speaking, having lots of meals can lead to what's called diet fatigue, which is applicable to either if you're trying to lose weight or gain weight, but to where you just get tired of your diet or your regime that you're trying to maintain. So if you have lots of meals spaced out during the day, you might just overdo it. And there are strategies to manage hunger and fullness so you don't just feel full all the time. But that can be one thing that comes up with this strategy. So these are good guidelines, benchmarks. There are exceptions that you can manage, but just keep these in mind. Now, we talked about weight gain and weight loss. These are going to play into how often you should eat as well, as we talked about before. But in this case, we're going to give a practical example. So let's say the calories that you determine, or that if you ask us, that we tell you you need to be consuming in order to reasonably lose weight is 2,200 calories. If in your case you decide that you want to gain weight, that might be 2,200 calories. And that's because in the middle of these two different plans, your maintenance calories would be somewhere around 1,700. That's the amount of calories that you need to consume in order to maintain your body weight, which isn't a bad thing to do, by the way, but that is the midpoint of these two different plans. So you're at 1,700 calories for maintenance. If you decide to lose weight, it might be a good idea to introduce a 500 calorie deficit, which is where we land with this 1,200 calories. Or if you're trying to gain weight, a 500 calorie surplus on the other side is probably a good idea. So these are our two different avenues. So as we mentioned before, if you're trying to lose weight, it can be better to have fewer meals during the day. And here's the practical example of why. So we have 3 meals and 1,200 calories to work with. As you can see here, we can spread the calories out depending on how hungry you are during the day, what our energy needs are, when your training is during the day, and we can spread those calories out to where it makes the most sense for you. So let's say you wake up in the morning, meal 1 rolls around. Say you're not particularly hungry during breakfast, you don't need to have a huge meal. Let's just dedicate 300 calories. And then lunchtime rolls around, and then you know that you're coming in for an early or a late afternoon, early evening session after you get done with lunch and you're off of work. Then we might want more calories here, more carbohydrates to give you more energy, and then you have a better chance of putting in an A effort when it comes to training. And then you have your remaining 350 calories at the end of the day that you might use to recover from your workout, and it doesn't need to be quite as hefty as your pre-workout meal, but might be around the same size as meal number 1. So that's why we have that correspondence in the calories there. This can be a great way to approach weight loss. If we come over here to the alternative choice that you have of gaining weight, we have more calories to work with, but for that reason, it might make more sense to spread those calories out further into more meals during the day, because it can be hard to eat 800 calories or plus of that if you're trying to gain weight. Some people can do that pretty easily, and there's some food selection choices that might be better than others, but this is generally a good approach to where we have 1 extra meal compared to the weight loss diet plan, and therefore we have more slots that we can spread calories out to where meals aren't overwhelming. So we have meal number 1. Might be the same situation with you if you were going to decide to gain weight instead of lose weight, to where during breakfast you're not as hungry as you would during the rest of the day. So you have about 450 calories, a little bit greater than meal 1 in the weight loss plan, but comparable in some way. Then meal 2 rolls around, might be like mid-morning, getting close to lunchtime. It's going to be a little bit bigger than meal number 1, and then meal number 3 rolls around, which is your high roller, your heavy hitter, 600 calories, and this might be the meal that you have right before training. So then you decide to really up the calories, up the carbohydrates, and all those energy sources. Then you smash your training session, you have your post-workout meal, which is a little bit less than your pre-workout meal, and then you're good to go before bed. So this, as I mentioned before, just with this whole presentation, this is just the tip of the iceberg, general structural guidelines when you're trying to understand how many meals should I eat, how does that vary depending on what my goals are, and how do I understand that practically. This is a bare bones approach, and these are general recommendations over here and questions you might want to ask yourself, but this is a great way to begin to answer the question how often you should eat. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.